Bills baseball. KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. This is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman.
Fires a pass, and it's intercepted by the Huskers at the 25, Jay Foreman. And Foreman takes it down to the 19-yard line of Oklahoma. Another big play by the Blackshirts.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
All right, welcome into Inside the Huddle here with Jay Foreman. And again, we will have Jay Foreman here joining us shortly as he's plugging in through the stream right now. As a matter of fact, there he is now. We'll bring in Jay. Jay, how's it going, man? Jay, can you hear me? All right. And Jay, we can't hear your audio. I'm not sure if you got it muted on your end. As we try to get that sorted out. And again, we do have Jay Foreman with Inside the Huddle going over the first Husker game. And it looks like, Jay, can you hear me all right? Or are we having some Wi-Fi issues? It looks like I'm losing you here a little bit every 5 seconds or so. Jay, can you hear me at all? All right, we might have to go ahead and throw it to another early break as we're losing Jay, and we could have a Wi-Fi issue here as we try to get this all sorted out. And again, Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman. And again, this is sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging, again, at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Go there for all your needs as we try to get Jay Foreman plugged in. We'll go ahead and throw it to a quick break, and we'll have 2 long segments, see if we can't get this sorted out here. Again, with Jay Foreman Inside the Huddle. We'll be back in a little bit.
College football in Lincoln, America. The time has come. Start your game day off right with the A1 Automotive Ticket Tailgate pregame show. Join the Ticket crew as they bring you all the coverage you need to get you ready for the action. It's the A1 Automotive Ticket Tailgate pregame show, powered by Sunbelt Rentals. Ben Bleicher with Professional Realty Group of BHHS Ambassador. Select Plumbing, Jimmy John's, Lincoln Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits, Fleet Beef, Yours Cheese Spread, on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Cuando me dijo que se le estaban olvidando las cosas, fue difícil. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco del lado por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Yo le diría a la gente que le diga a su familia lo que está pasando con él.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Visita alz.org/nuestras historias para saber más. Un mensaje de The Alzheimer's Association y The Ad Council.
I always had to be so good, no one could ignore me. Carve my path with data and drive. But some people only see who I am on paper. The paper ceiling. The limitations from degree screens to stereotypes that are holding back over 70 million stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time for skills to speak for themselves. Find resources for breaking through barriers at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and Ad Council.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Sponsored by DHHS and aired in cooperation with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is your captain. We are going to be experiencing some slight turbulence. Please fasten your... Oh, hold on. Just got a video of my cat.
Imagine the pilot of an airplane was as confident as you are texting and driving. Seems kind of crazy when you put it like that.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Veterans, do you know what local, state, and federal benefits and services you're eligible to receive? Do you want help navigating the application or appeals process? Speak to your county veteran service officer or the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs State Service Office to see what's available to you and your family. You've served our country, now let us serve you. Visit veterans.nebraska.gov today. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here. I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
We are back. Are we in effect in 2023?
We are.
All right, man. After some technical difficulties, man. We are back inside the huddle. Jay Foreman, Harrison over there. I am obviously not in studio, trying to understand this Wi-Fi issue that we have in the hotel, but we think that we got it figured out. But we have two long segments. Obviously, we're going to dive right into the game that between the Gophers and the Nebraska Cornhuskers Thursday night up in Minneapolis. Obviously, it didn't work out the way that everybody hoped and planned. And we had control of the game, lost control of the game. I think, and then obviously the way it ended was not the way that anybody wanted it ended. The players, coaches, and definitely the fans probably left disappointed. But, really when you think about how the game started, Harrison, you expected the team to play a little tight, be a little bit nervous. Minnesota has had a good defense. Over the last 3 years, they've been ranked in the top 4 or 5 in the Big Ten, and no lower than 15 in the national overall defensive ranking. So that their defense and what their defensive coordinator Joe Rossi had built up there. You knew what they were going to do, especially being at home. That they had some good players. They got a first-round pick at safety. Their really good linebacker was hurt, and they always have had a couple good corners. And then obviously got a good interior defensive line. I think one of the things that really Minnesota really wasn't proficient at last year was rushing the passer. And so, they came out excited, and Nebraska started a little slow. But, our defense, kept us in the game. It was 3-0 at halftime. Definitely, had a couple chances to, have the lead. I really think that when you're on the road, points are a premium, no matter how it looks. And when you start putting points on the board, it kind of makes everybody on the sideline loosen up a little bit or play a little bit more freer. And obviously everybody is, talking about the interception right before half. That's something at the worst case scenario, really is one of those cause and effect things, right? So let's go all the way back to the first interception, right? And if there's ever any positives in that, you got to think of it. So Jeff Sims tried to hit Billy Kemp, I think, on like what looked like a crossing route. By my estimation, he probably had around 5 seconds to pass the ball around there. He had a lot of time, wanted to step up, kind of didn't step up, wanted to get, feed the ball in there and forced it in there to double coverage. So, obviously the decision making there to force it in there probably that late in the play clock, right? So what happens is quarterbacks have an internal clock, and they, 3.5 seconds at the most, they got to get rid of the ball. Well, also you got to think that, one of the positive things is the protection from the offensive line. for you to be able to step up. Ideally, in 5 seconds, you're able to go from your first read, second read, third read. He locked in on number one. Unfortunately, the first interception. And then when you think of, you kind of, the defense comes on, makes Minnesota punt. Minnesota had, I think, a couple penalties of their own, which is good. That shows some discipline on our side and lack of continuity discipline on their side. And so we get the ball and drive it all the way down there. Doesn't look the prettiest, but we drive it all the way down there right before half. I do believe the two previous plays that Gabe Irvin's touchdown or Gabe Irvin's run was a touchdown. The problem is, and this is what people have to understand, and this is what I don't like about the replay rule or the bylaws of it. If you call it, call him down at the half-yard line, it has to be so clear that it's a touchdown. Well, in reality, is I guess in the NFL rules, when your elbow, wherever the ball is, when your body part hits, it's a touchdown. Well, they just went with the back up the refs because for whatever reason they don't want to ever have the refs look like they're in the wrong. They went where his elbow went down, and it's a subjective call. They if they ruled it a touchdown, it's a touchdown. If they didn't, they're okay either way. Well, then we try to go up and do what's called goose. That's called a goose. Essentially, is the quick snap quarterback sneak. 6'4", 225-pound quarterback. And the college rules have changed after Reggie Bush and the USC Trojans out at Notre Dame, where you can just bum rush the quarterback in there. Safe play, Ethan Piper, false starts, and now you're back 5 yards. You're at the 5.5 yard line, all right, or 5 yard line. The problem with the false start is this: when you're that close to the center and that close to the line of scrimmage, you're not going to blow anybody off the ball, right? They know what's coming. Really all you have to do is just get in the way. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a guard or a tackle in field goal protection or extra point protection. You're essentially just kind of bending over sideways and making sure you don't give direct access to block the kick. Well, he got jumpy, and he did that quite a few times. And sometimes, I wouldn't say that, he's playing scared, but you're playing definitely in an anticipatory manner, meaning that you're going out and anticipating and overextending yourself on plays. And you cost the team 5 yards, right? Okay, 5 yards, no big deal. But the problem is this: when you false start like that, it's either a 10-second runoff, or you have to call timeout. When you come out of the timeout, have a pass play, easy route combination, kind of a corner route, stop, or it's pretty much we used to call it a box out route by Tony Gonzalez or any tight end like that, size of Borkature or Fedoni. Tight end comes up, curls right, essentially a half a yard in the end zone. So if I'm playing behind him, I can't get him. I can't get to the ball because of the catch radius of the tight end. Or if I try to go around him or through the side, then the quarterback has to fit it wherever I'm not, or based on the leverage. Well, Minnesota saw that he was trying to fit it into the corner route, right? And that's something that generally you do in practice when you hold the ball more than 3 seconds in practice in the red zone. So if the internal play clock in the field is 3.5 seconds, the internal play clock in the red zone needs to be like 1.8, right? Everything's happening quicker. You got to make quicker decisions. Quicker decisions, the first thing that you see and the first thing that you feel, you go with. Well, he held the ball, tried to get it in the corner. Gopher's receiver did a really good job coming off of his coverage, getting underneath the route and intercepting it. And it's a worst case scenario, a 3-point turnaround, maybe 7. And so instead of going in and tied, worst case scenario, or going in with a 4-point lead, either way, now you just gave away easy points on the board. and going into halftime. So that was a little disappointing. And, I was a little worried about how maybe that would affect Nebraska, but, I was more than pleasantly surprised and kind of knew that maybe Matt Rule had planned for this. Not planned for it. You never planned to have those series of plays, right? It's not like you practice those. But I think that he had mentally trained these guys to understand bad things are going to happen, and we're okay, and we're a good enough team to bounce back from it, right? He said it before halftime when he got interviewed. And, come right out and have a 65-yard return by Ramir and, end up scoring 7 points. Now, the way we scored, it was a great play call by Marcus Satterfield. Well run, just not executed to the utmost perfection with Jeff Sims dropping the ball. But I like it that he, kept at it. Chased the ball anyways, because you never know what the ref's going to call. Got a good bounce off the field turf. Had the wherewithal to hit the open receiver, which is Bullock. Touchdown. We have the momentum. Right there, it seems like that's where I wouldn't say our avalanche goes, but that's where we started to really gain momentum. You saw the guys on defense flying around. You saw the sidelines, really start believing in themselves. Like, hey, look, we actually got, some dumb luck to go our way, right? And so when you think about it, you evaluate the game in two halves, obviously, but you really evaluated in the momentum shifts, right? The Gophers came out, took the momentum. Nebraska kind of held serve a little bit. Nebraska got the momentum going into halftime, gave it away. Nebraska comes out of halftime because they had the ball and took it and secured it firmly on their sideline. Had a 7-3 lead. Going back and forth, teams were kind of, I think both offenses took turns stubbing their toe. You know what I mean? Especially for the Gophers and give them credit. They get the running game going, get a couple passing games going, quarterback would get in rhythm, and then next thing you know, they'd have a penalty or we would make obviously a tackle for loss or something like that, which is obviously good on us. But in the same thing, Nebraska gets some running game going. You had a big run by Gabe Irvin, and then next thing you know, you don't turn that into touchdowns. Those when you get big explosive runs, explosive passes, you're supposed to turn those into 7 points. Both offenses didn't give credit to the defense and defensive coordinators, but then we were fortunate enough to have a 10-3 lead. You know what I'm saying? And the Gophers were in desperation. I think they were helped out by a penalty, and they drove it all the way down there. And next thing you know, Nebraska did a really good job on first and second down of essentially being on their heels, bend but don't break, but making some plays, right? Making, they had a pass breakup, a tackle, and a run game. Third down, kind of crossing route or deep crossing around the end zone. Defensive backs are there, have a chance to seal the game, drop the interception. I talk about cause and effect on every single show that I'm on because it's crucial, right? And it's not saying that technically you lost the game, but it's the cause what generally happens. Football is a weird game, Harrison. Seriously. I mean, I watch football all weekend. I'm gonna watch it all today. I wish you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start counting maybe today, and I'm gonna have it for next week, is how many times a big penalty, a busted coverage, a simple tackle leads to a touchdown within 2 or 3 plays or a game-changing play. I'm telling you, man, it is like almost like 100%. Very rarely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because, we had Gifford, he dropped the interception. It would have been a hard interception, right? Dropped it. I think if you're out there, I think you're good enough to make that play. Okay, so you did.
He has 2 hands on. He was pretty much at it. In his head, he's got to get that one.
Right. It's the old adage that the receiver coaches used to say: if it touches your hands, you got to catch it. Right. That's only rings true for Jerry Rice. But I still think he should have got it. I still think he should have got it. Right. So, okay, he didn't. It's 4th and 10, and it's do or die. Right. Minnesota essentially has to score or get close to the end zone. And Nebraska got burnt on, I think, a series before or in a few plays before where Newsome was trailing the receiver man to man in the red zone, and so Tony White knew that, right? Quentin Newsome did an awesome job playing through the whistle, and they tried to fit it in there, but he caught it out of bounds. So in that sense, Minnesota thought that Nebraska was going to play man. Tony White did a really good job and said, you know what, I'm going to play zone. And maybe, and you know what, defensive coordinators watched what the other defense is doing. He saw that Minnesota played zone in the red zone, right? It's 4th and 10. You know, you don't want somebody to have good coverage and get a cheap, pass interference penalty or something like that, give them a first down, and then they got another 4 downs, essentially just back their way in. Calls a zone, really good call because of the formation. You have Javen Wright, Buddha inside. You have the safety over top inside. Essentially, Hartzog just got to take care of the outside, right, to the wide side of the field. So you're almost playing in a prevent type of defense because you could get a crossing route coming from another side of the formation, or you could get that slot or somebody coming out late, right, trying to run a confusing route to you where the one goes and takes the safety and the slot comes out to the corner and see where you're at. Well, ultimately, they just ran a corner route on you expecting man. It actually was the perfect route for the perfect coverage, which would have been zone. Hartzog jumped on the slant at about 4 or 5 yards, which you should never do probably in zone, on 4th and 10. And Callum McNinas made a perfect throw, and it's a perfect catch. It was a phenomenal catch, right? But I'm willing to bet if the receiver wasn't open, well, completely wide open, he doesn't throw that.
Well, I mean, you said it yourself, Hartzog. I mean, he had help inside. He just had to hold it. He had one thing he didn't have to do was step inside. That's where all his help was, and it was just a huge mental breakdown by him. Which, and again, I think it was a lot of those first game errors. I'm hoping that it's just small mental breakdowns they get back to, because a lot of that, again, was just those small errors. Perfect coverage by Tony White, like you said. He's just got to watch the outside. He has all the help inside, and he just bites. Touchdown, easy touchdown. And again, I think the pass was a little inaccurate, but he was just that wide open. It was a great catch by the receiver, but you just can't get burned like that. I think that was probably the worst, coverage I saw all night out of Hartzog.
But those are the things. The 4th down and 10, you got to understand the game's on the line. You got to expect the ball coming your way, and you got to, and that's the hardest thing about playing, right? And Hartzog really, he started, the second half of the season. He's still inexperienced, right? Understand that being in those type of situations, making those plays. Don't think that they're not coming my way. The mindset needs to be they're coming my way. And really, to be honest with you, a little bit tighter coverage. I don't think he makes that catch, because when you have that much separation, you can kind of go through your on air footwork, toe drag swag, and the quarterback doesn't throw it in there. With the worst case scenario, I guess, it's there. He bobbles it. It's not the quarterback's fault if he doesn't catch it. But when he does, it turns out to be obviously a game-changing catch, because it gave them momentum. When I'm not willing to bet. I know on that sideline, they didn't think that they were going to get the touchdown. It was a surprise. That's where the pandemonium and the excitement came from. Like, holy crap, we just made a miraculous catch, pretty much a top 10 catch of the weekend, top 5 catch of the weekend. And now we tied the game, when actually we were thinking about how did we lose this game, because all the pressure was on PJ Fleck and the Gophers to win this game because they were favored. Nobody expected Nebraska to win. They expected Nebraska to be somewhat of a surprise because it's a new coaching staff, but nobody expected Nebraska to win. Everybody up in Minneapolis was talking about this is a year, somehow, some way, that PJ Fleck, because of the turnover in the Big Ten West, has to get the Gophers to Indianapolis. So the pressure was on them. So those are the things you got to think about when you're out there playing. And if you just sit back and let the plays come to you, you'll be fine. Every game comes down to 4 or 5 plays. It really does. And then unfortunately for us, all 5 of those plays, they work out for us. If there's like 6 to 8 plays, we were involved in 6 of them in the bad way, right? You got 4 interceptions, a busted coverage, so that's 5, right? But you know what? As much as we're talking about this, Harrison, the game's still tied. We had it with 2 minutes and 39 seconds. The offense, including Jeff Sims, were moving the ball. I wouldn't say easily, but at a steady pace down the field. And I think maybe it was a timeout. Correct me if I'm wrong. Come out of a timeout, right? Get a first down.
Yep.
And it's first down, and we're running. Started to feature Marcus Washington a little bit. It probably would have been a really good time to try to get Billy Kemp going on. But I will say this. Everybody can talk about scheming up Billy Kemp. He had Velcro on him, man. He couldn't get out. He had no separation. Nobody had
I want
separation
to
there
ask
in the
you about
inside.
the wide receivers later when we have time for it.
Yeah,
Chris,
the second segment we're gonna get into it, man. And it's just a recap of the game that you couldn't get open, but really, you come out of there, it's first down. I always look at sometimes in those situations, first down. I call them dummy downs or waste downs, right? If I'm a coordinator, and then as a defensive guy, this is what I think. If you're gonna run the ball, it's got to be within the first two plays. And if you call a run and say you get 6 yards, well, the defense is dumb enough to give you 6 yards. Now I could be ultra aggressive, or I could just run it again. So now the defense is on their heels, right? And sometimes a defense will give you a free first down. Not give it to you. They won't tell you, but they'll call coverages or defensive fronts to give you a first down. So we decided to pass. Now the I guess in theory the play was okay, right? The play calling, because I always say this: there's not a play out there that, if it's executed, that you can't get some sort of positive yardage. There's not. It just doesn't work like that. The problem was the decision making and the execution by the quarterback, right? And so when the safety comes from the other side of the formation, the slot formation, and is able to pick off a ball on a skinny post like that, you've been staring down your receivers way, way too much all night long. And it's probably one of the things that Jeff Sims did at Georgia Tech. They study tape. They go back and they ask, and they just played what you've been doing all night, made a great interception, and they get it. Then again, I still had confidence that the defense was going to get us to overtime. I'm not sure about you, but I did.
I was a little surprised that final drive where they I don't want to say they gave in. I mean, they were out there on the field for quite a bit, but I was surprised. I mean, at that last drive there, you thought they're gonna be able to hold their own, and it looks pretty easy for Minnesota to walk up and get in the field goal range. But I don't want to put, you don't either, because they played well enough. 13 points is good enough to win that game.
Yeah, I think it's a little part of getting over the disappointment of another interception, right? Versus looking at it, all right, let's go out and shut these guys down again. Let's go. Okay, it's sudden change, right? You're defending. You can't think like, oh, we can't give up 16 yards of field goal. Let's not okay. We can't give up 16. Let's only give up 13. Figure out a way to change your mindset, and I think that's where they need to get to the next level. But ultimately, Harrison, even though they didn't look like they had the same type of zest for it, they had them right where you wanted them. Minnesota, I think, called a timeout, and they gutted them with that 12-yard run.
Mm-hmm.
That was it right there. That's the inexperience of some of the players out there not understanding, and after 2 passes, that they will run the ball because they're trying to get in the field goal range. You know what I'm saying? And so that was probably the most disappointing thing. And then the kicker was, was a good kicker, man. He's one of the top-ranked kickers coming out of high school when he did. And he made a good kick, even though that, he missed the 54-yarder before. So, and that was the game, pretty much a walk-off field goal. So, how Nebraska had the momentum essentially they were in an advantageous position because Minnesota didn't put them away early pretty much.
The entire second half, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, all the way up until, I'm trying to think, the 3 quarters of the third quarter. I mean, pretty much the whole game, Nebraska was right where they needed to be, on the road, first time head coach, first time quarterback, everything's new. They 85-90% of the game was what you wanted Nebraska to go away. Those last few minutes to where you weren't able to execute and do the simple things really hurt Nebraska and end up losing. And there's a lot of positives that came out of it. I felt like the offensive line, even though they had the same cast of characters, looked better. I think interior, I think that, everybody's all Turner Corcoran on the 2 sacks. Now, I will tell you this, and before we go to break about 2 sacks, he needs to do a better job in playing with playing more physical with his punch and pad level, right? I call it leverage. But both times he was expecting inside help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's a little tip I always tell people that about offensive line, or especially when you play linebacker, right? Because I've gotten burnt doing this. Don't play hoping or expecting help. Play football. You know what I mean? And so in that case, block the dude. Obviously, understand where your help's coming from. But if your help ain't coming, don't let the dude get in there. That's probably the only eyesore. They did an okay job, I think, running the ball. Not a lot of chances, but they did good in the quarterback run game. So I think they did a better job than they usually gotten credit for with the same cast of characters. They definitely can play better, but they, definitely held their own, especially being on the road. Now we need to get rid of some of the. I think we had 1 or 2 false starts, right, or one of them.
Yeah.
And I guess let's throw the tight ends in there. Throw the tight ends in there too. They need to. You can't do that. You can't have legal formations and false starts. So you got to nip that in the bud. But overall, they should feel like they're a little bit better. I think Ben Scott helped. I think when they brought in Jenkins as the tight end, I think that helped. I like the innovation, or not innovation, but I guess a different mindset of Satterfield and Raiola. Jenkins is good. He plays with good tenacity. Throw him in there a tight end, right? Try to get it. You saw some good things there. You saw some movement, right? So I felt like they did good. I think the running backs did okay. I mean, obviously Anthony Grant. It's two different things, right? Gabe and Ramir, I think, did good. Anthony Grant did good. Besides fumbling, you have got to stop fumbling the ball. It was bad ball technique under pressure. That can't happen. But when we come back, Harrison, let's talk about the wide receiver room, because I think that's interesting. It's going to be something to really keep an eye on. And then let's include the tight end room there. We're going to talk about that. And then obviously, we're on the road going up there to Boulder, and we got to dive in and see what we got to deal with up in Colorado and get people's mind right. So, Jay Foreman and Harrison, Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. We'll be right back.
I think it's just vapor. Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
One vape pod has as much nicotine as 1 pack of cigarettes.
My kid
knows it's dangerous. 5.4 million American kids vape, and most think it's harmless. Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org. That's talkaboutvaping.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
Getting experience to jumpstart a meaningful career can be difficult, and education can cost a fortune. Luckily, AmeriCorps can be the solution. With AmeriCorps, you'll earn a stipend and education award while helping people. Plus, you'll gain professional skills and make connections to help you build your career. If you're ready to start a career you can be proud of, visit serve.nebraska.gov/service to find a program for you. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Dial 988, then press 1, and you'll be connected to a trained crisis counselor who will listen, provide support, and connect you to additional resources if needed. Thank you for your service. We owe you our support. Dial 988, then press 1. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
September is National Literacy Month, a time to encourage the young people in your life to go to the library, pick up a good book, and explore new worlds. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. By getting books in the hands of kids, we can engage these young readers in their learning and help them see how school, community, and the world beyond are connected.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best.
What about those round trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Nebraska State Veterans Homes are here to serve veterans, their spouses, surviving spouses, and Gold Star parents. Join your fellow veterans and their families at one of our homes in Bellevue, Kearney, Norfolk, or Scottsbluff. With a sliding scale to determine your financial contribution, an excellent clinical team, and plenty of fun activities, our homes are the perfect retirement choice. Learn more at veterans.nebraska.gov/homes. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, call 988 for free, confidential, and compassionate support. On July 16th, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is transitioning to 988. There is hope. For 24/7 support, call, text, or chat 988.
Sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
How was your drive to school?
Let me tell you, I had to get my iced coffee first. I just can't seem to put it down. My favorite rapper just announced a tour. My phone was buzzing like crazy. I'm so excited. I had to text all my friends right then to talk about it. Then someone started calling me and...
Let's try that again.
I turned my phone off right away. I never drive distracted.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
We are back inside the huddle. Jay Foreman, second segment. After a loss, man, it's hard, man, because you know that the fans and everybody can get down. You know what I mean, Harrison? But ultimately, it's just part of it's part of the deal. Really the expectations. Sometimes people can be very short-sighted, right? Where he's like, I have to curtail it about some of the things that I saw out there, that were somewhat alarming. That you can draw a blank, assumption off of one game. But that's where high hopes. I think throughout the whole offseason, Matt Rule and staff have done a good job of putting action behind what they've kind of said, and and so people expected to see, some things different. But what you also have to understand is in every football game, and no matter who it was, Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, there was turnovers in every game, right? And there was things that the players that were coached to do that they didn't execute to the utmost perfection, out there on, whenever they played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and you will see today, you got a big game between LSU and Florida State. So that's where Nebraska's at. And then, sometimes when you're playing against a good opponent in a rivalry, a rival in Minnesota, somewhat rival, at least Big Ten West, thorn in the side, they know you well enough and know your personnel well enough. You might have a new coach, but they know your personnel, right? And they know your strengths and weaknesses for the most part. And so that's where mistakes come from. But then also, you guys also have to think that there were some positives in the things that, were had plagued Nebraskans some time. The special teams was definitely a bright spot, right? The defense and everybody wondering what the 3-3-5 would look like. That game, the defense looked pretty good. Didn't look perfect, but it looked exactly what Tony White was saying. You're gonna put guys out there. They're gonna run to the ball, and he, his quote was, they start at A. Sometimes they skip over B, but we got to make sure they get to C with the right, attitude and leverage. And for the most part, I always tell you this about the defense. They look way more physical. They look like a better tackling team. They looked faster in the sense of, so that lets you know that they know what they were doing. And they look like a more cohesive unit. Now I know it's just one game, but, they very easily could have went out there and looked like they were confused and don't know what to do on a big stage. And so when you have a lot of new starters on defense, that sometimes could happen where, you don't go out there and put your best foot forward and not play well. But I think the defense played well. They had an interception, great play by Omar Brown, who I feel like this, and just let's just look into the skill position or defense a little bit as well as evaluating them. I felt like the defensive line did an okay job. I think Ty Robinson did a good job in the first half getting some pressures. There's two legitimate holding calls that the refs, missed right there. Obviously a bonehead play, getting ejected with the targeting. I don't like the rule, but the rule is the rule. I think Nash did okay, Blaze did okay, Cam Lenhart did a really good job. But on that big run, he needed it. He got caught peeking, needed to get inside there. But he's a freshman, so that's a freshman mistake, right? The linebackers, the two inside guys, I think played pretty good. I think Luke Reimer started the game off the way he needed to, and then John Bullock, after starting a little slow, kind of guessing a little bit, really settled down and started to flash and make some plays. And so I think as the season goes on and the more he plays, the more comfortable that he gets in the system, he'll play well. And so I think they had a passing grade. The one disappointing thing was the jack position. And that's the playmaking position in the front 6 or 7 or whatever you want to call it. No activity, not enough. That's the playmaking position. That's what you brought here to make plays. They need to have a good week of practice in the next few days and really get it going, because they're going to have to be a total different animal, whatever combination it is. Chief Borders, MJ Sherman, or Jamarlee Butler is back. Better get it together, because that's where the defense is gonna. If you want to take a next step, that position, you got to free up other guys, especially with Ty Robinson missing the first couple quarters. In DBs, I break them up in two. Right, I thought the safeties played pretty dang good. Singleton and Omar Brown. Singleton was flying around. You heard about Rule saying he's going to be one of your better players. New coaching staff, new life. Definitely, because Deshaun Singleton was a potential, last year. Didn't really kind of get, a lot of reps, but you see why he was recruited. And I think he was probably a blessing in disguise. He played really well. Omar Brown played well as well. Excellent. And Gifford, held his own. Obviously, I'm not going to downgrade him for dropping that pass, even though I think he should have. Not going to just take him from a B to a D, but if you want to be out there, you got to make those plays. So overall, I think the safety and Rover group did well. But I think also then the corners, I think I was disappointed in the corner play. There's a couple of plays they had lost their leverage, right? Those guys are too experienced in playing out there, and there's too much space and coverage, I think. And then obviously the last play for Hartzog, I think he's a better player in that. So it was an overall passing grade. I think you're looking for perfection on defense because, the way the offense played, you figure, we got to hold them to 3 points or 9 points, and we didn't. So the defense, you showed the potential you could, right? Self-inflicted wounds. There's nothing that Minnesota did besides take advantage of, right spots. One that was interesting, man. Bullock, it was good for him to be a walk-on, worked his way up. Him and John, big ups to them, earning scholarships. Coming out of high school, I think Alex Bullock he's a phenomenal athlete, man. I mean, he was good. He was good. He was really good at Creighton Prep. I saw him play live a couple times. I'm surprised they didn't offer him. There were some guys there before at Nebraska that were on a scholarship that definitely Bullock was better. But with a new coaching staff, he's able to work his way up. Some injuries, and obviously Xavier Best leaving, provided opportunity. I think he obviously, showed well, and expect him to play at or close to that level moving forward. But then everybody else was like non-existent. We talked about Billy Kemp. I think you got to find ways to scheme him up, whether it's jailbreak screens, bubble screens, now routes. You saw that a lot with Colorado where they did it to their running back, but it's the same thing, right? They essentially got the ball tossed to him. Billy Kemp is an excellent was an excellent punt returner. And is your punt returner, so he is a good punt returner. Put him in those situations, get him confidence, scheme him up to get him some routes, and get him back on track for this offense to go. He's got to be a viable part, especially you don't know how long IGC is out, and Marcus Washington showed well in the second half, but there's an asterisk by that. I think, I'm sure people tell me during the week, I think he didn't play in the first half because he's suspended. Right? Maybe.
Yeah.
But he didn't play
I'm
in the
not
first
sure
half.
what the
And if
exact
I'm
reason
wrong,
was. Matt Rule did give some reasons he didn't say exactly why, but he did state he was out for disciplinary reasons. So whether that be school or
right.
waiver
Okay,
room,
so then okay. Okay, whatever it is, at that point, that's on you, man. I mean, you got to think, okay, yeah, you had, 3 catches, 31 yards, but you could have had 6 for 70. We needed you. So whatever rule you broke or rules you broke, I'm sure I'm not sure if you're late one time that you're out for a half of football. The repeat offenses, right? Whether it's one thing or a combination of things. You have to think right now, was that so important for you to consciously break those rules? Because I don't think they have a ton of rules, right? So you broke those rules late, missing stuff, or not being a participation as much as everybody else. Worth not playing in one game in the first half. Worth potentially not being the number one receiver that you've probably hopefully trained and wanted to be all off season. Was it worth it? Not saying that you lost the game, but you didn't participate in the game. You get what I'm saying? You didn't help us win in that first half. And ideally, maybe even think about it to even double down on it, right? I would rather throw a jump ball to Marcus Washington one-on-one versus have Jeff Sims throwing the coverage. Right? Okay, now the water underneath the bridge. He came back in the second half, represented, right? Okay, so now that's what we're expecting. At this point, you can't have guys around that can't do the easy stuff. So at this point, we're playing for real now, right? I'm not holding your hand and you didn't understand the rules and all that stuff. The rules are the rules, right? And Matt Rule's the coach. Get it together. Because you have the potential, to do some stuff, and now we're moving on to Colorado. And I will say this, and this is from experience. If you think it was intense in Minnesota, if you think the Gopher fans that were happy-go-lucky and willing to, when you tailgate, give you a beer, give you a burger, if you think that was intense, you are now officially, like they say, you are now officially going into the Lions Den in Boulder, Colorado. You are going to experience something that you remember for the rest of your sports career and the rest of your life as a player.
And it looks like we might have lost Jay just for a second there. And we'll get back to him as soon as this Wi-Fi plugs back in here. But again, he's talking about our upcoming game versus Colorado. Obviously, they just beat 17-ranked TCU. A lot to talk about there, as Hunter, obviously, phenomenal two-way player. I mean, you talk about Hunter's game just in general versus Colorado yesterday. If he makes just one more interception, he might be the Heisman front runner already. And obviously, you want to see how the rest of the season plays out. But again, this is why this game is going to be so interesting, is because Colorado unexpectedly, offensively nearly dominated that game. The only spot they were really lacking was their defense. They just couldn't slow TCU down, especially in that run when they really got it going there. But overall, TCU's defense could not stop Colorado. And again, that just kind of shows what they have talent-wise, what Deion was able to do, get over 80 new players. It's going to be an atmosphere, and they're ready. Jay, we lost you for a little bit there, so I took over. You were talking about Colorado, TCU. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, it's going to be a Lions Den, man. I mean, Colorado went down there. I mean, first of all, anybody expected Deion not to be – I don't know why they don't think he's a good coach, right? He's won everywhere. He's won state titles in Texas. He sent numerous players to Division I. He's developed pro players. First of all, he's a Hall of Fame player. He's one of the most iconic players ever to play. He's one of the top 6 players ever to play football. So when you evaluate coaches, especially and I know there's been a lot of former players not do well that are Hall of Famers, but Deion, that's not Deion, right? So when you think of how he became a great player, dedication, attention to detail, and accountability. Every player that he had that's played for him has been there. If you want another example, Marcus Washington was here when Frost was here. Deion didn't sign off on him. It lets you know everything. Every other player that he's had, he signed off on. So because Marcus Washington wasn't up to the standard, right? It hurt him from going somewhere, but he pretty much told you without telling you. And if you go back and watch and see what he did at Jackson State and watch that, YouTube show he had, everything was about what we're doing here in Nebraska. So now he's on a bigger stage with resources and limited resources up in Colorado. And he has an NFL quarterback. He has a legitimate college Pac-12 running back that Deion's coached since he's been in like 4th grade or something like that. He has a plethora of receivers. All the defensive backs are pro material. And the offensive line, I think, was the biggest surprise, right? But
yeah, because that was the one group that, that's if you look at the entire roster that he had to overhaul, the offensive line was the biggest group that it looks like he couldn't really rehaul that entire offensive line, but they still impressed, like you said.
Well, he went out. The one thing Deion did is he went out and hired a good staff, just kind of like Nebraska. They hired a good staff. Guys that he knew. You got a Nick Saban disciple as a defensive coordinator, and you hired the head coach from Kent State that was one of the best, that's well known as one of the best play callers out there, and he runs an up-tempo offense. So when you got speed, the best way to, I guess, smoke screen your offensive line, as you saw when the spread offense first came out in college, is run up tempo. Well, you got 4 legitimate NFL receivers, and you got a quarterback that's extremely accurate. I mean.
Extremely.
So extremely accurate. He's been accurate his whole life, though. The accuracy, this is the thing that people don't understand. An accurate quarterback is just an accurate quarterback. Period.
Well, I'll say this is why I'm not surprised. People are saying, especially for a lot of these players, they're coming from HBCUs, FCS schools.
Right.
46 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, 46 touchdowns and 3 interceptions entering the game. I didn't have any question that he was going to be a damn good quarterback heading in there. You said it yourself, like he's accurate. It's going to carry at every.
Yeah, he is who he is. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He was a 4-star recruit. He turned down Florida State, Alabama, everybody else, and so here's the thing. The difference between HBCU or in smaller colleges in Power 5 isn't the skill position, guys. They come from all over the place. Right. Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens. I mean, you could go on and on with all these guys that come from there. Steve McNair. It's not the skill position. It's not. It's in the line. And so what Deion was able to do is able to go out and get some starters, right? You got a starter from Alabama, starter from Florida State, and mixed in with some other guys. Went and recruited well, and hired an offensive line coach, and they held up pretty good. Now the defense didn't play well, so Nebraska should be thinking we got to take advantage of it. But Nebraska has to make sure that they handle their business before they try to handle Colorado business. And so, it's going to be, a different atmosphere. It's going to be way more intense. they're going to have to really focus in on the things that they didn't do well personally. That means us on offensive, because the crowd noise is going to affect them the most, in order to pull out a victory up there in Boulder. It can be done. And one thing I'll leave you with this, Harrison. If I was going to talk to the players, you are playing the Colorado Buffaloes. You aren't playing Deion Sanders. Focus on your individual matchups every single time. Lack of pressure preparation brings pressure. It's either it brings pressure or it brings focus. When you prepare right, the pressure doesn't affect you. It allows you to focus more. Think about your individual matchups, offense, defense, and special teams, and you go up there and play to win. They'll be just fine. So I'm excited to see them do it. I'll be back in studio Tuesday. Appreciate everybody dealing with this Wi-Fi issue. I think I got it figured out, but a little bit, too late. But we'll be back next week as well, right after Boulder. I'm coming back Saturday night. Big ups to Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Inside the Huddle, first one. We're 0-1. Hopefully next week we'll be 1-1. Jay Foreman, appreciate Harrison making it happen. We'll talk to you next week.